Why spend a fortune when you can achieve the same wrist presence for a fraction of the cost? Was this the only Seiko I ever needed? Absolute nonsense. What about dive watches? So this is what Seiko were doing 50 years ago. The Seiko 5 was always the introduction to automatic watches, beginning in 1963. But just look at what you got in those days. Now I just wanted to share this small miracle that I've found. An old Seiko 5 from my birth year, which suffice to say was after JFK but before the original Star Wars, so that's specific enough. It has been refurbished, not the case, but certainly the crystal must be new, and it looks like the dial's been cleaned. But look what you got in those days on this beautiful Seiko 5. You had a 37mm case. It's 11.5mm thick, so it's quite slim. You know, these are dimensions that the manufacturers are going back to now. And you got it all in those days. It's 44mm lug to lug, so it'll fit on any wrist. It's got the 6119 movement, which is keeping perfect time, by the way. It must have been regulated at some point. I've only had this a week. Oh, by the way, can you just, if you like these videos, can you just subscribe and like and share the videos? It takes a few seconds, costs nothing, but it does help the channel. Thanks. By finding this one watch, it's actually put an end to a search that I had. I was considering the Boulevard Jetstar and the Omega DeVille Prestige. But in this one little watch, it combines a lot of those features that those watches have, a lot of the appeal. I'm not surprised that the old retro vintage designs are making a comeback in modern watches, because this is exactly what they were like. Look at the detail around the inside of the bezel, and the beautiful hands and indices with the black centers and the polished facets. This watch has had some minor restoration, I think, over the years. Seiko were doing this 50 years ago, and in many ways I think they've been playing catch up ever since. Just look how it hugs the wrist. It literally fits like a glove. It's a beauty. If we get a close-up on the dial, you can see there's a lot going on there. Got a beautiful sunburst effect. The hands have a black section running right up the center, and each indice is beautifully cut with polished facets and a jet black center to match the hands. The Seiko 5 logo is printed. It must have been regulated because it keeps perfect time. There's some features that Seiko really went to town with at this time. Look at the ring, the detailed ring just inside the bezel. just hugs the wrist. It's the 6119 movement, 8250 case, and it even keeps time. I'm not surprised that modern watch manufacturers are harking back to their retro vintage days, looking through their old catalogues and bringing back old designs, just like this. Now, this was before the quartz crisis, which would come in the 70s when Seiko would decimate the Swiss watch industry. So they were working with mechanical movements prior to the quartz crisis, and they were trying to beat the Swiss at their own game. So they were putting all the effort they could into producing their watches, their mechanical watches. And this is an example from that time. So there it is, my birth year Seiko 5. This is a keeper. It's a gorgeous little thing, and you can see why the manufacturers are going back to these vintage inspired designs with their modern watches, which cost 10 times what this cost, at least. You know, 37mm case size. That's what a lot of the King Seikos, the new King Seikos, are now. Nevada Grenchen, their everyday watch is the F77. That's a 37mm. But some of these vintage gems are still available. Vintage Omega, vintage Seiko. You can find them. They might not have the water resistance that modern watches have, and they may have the old mineral crystals rather than sapphire crystals. But this is the look. This is exactly the look that modern manufacturers are trying to go back to with their watches.